Hello, friends, and welcome to Our Power is Within. I'm your host, Chaz Smith, and my mission for this podcast is to inspire you to take your power back and to realize that you are the healer that you have been looking for all along. If you are enjoying the content from this podcast and the guests that I've had on the show, there's a few ways that you can help support future episodes. First, click the subscribe button so that you have every new episode waiting for you in your podcast library and you do not miss a good one. Second, you could leave a 5-star rating and a quick review on Apple Podcasts, or you could share your favorite episode with a friend and on your social media. And don't forget to tag me at Our Power is Within. Lastly, at the bottom of the show notes, you will find a link directly to a tip jar where you can support monetarily if you do feel called to do so. And now that we got that out of the way, this week's challenge, it might feel like we just did a movement challenge, and surprise, we're going to do it again. In light of today's episode, it just seems to fit. So, who's with me? Can we make a commitment to ourselves to move our bodies every day in whatever capacity works for your window of tolerance? And if possible, challenge yourself to move your body in as many ways as possible, as often as possible, and in as many different places as is possible. Make it playful, fun, exciting, invigorating, and turn it into an adventure, an exploration. Be curious. See what is possible rather than focusing on what is not. You just never know what might surprise you along the way. So today is my 75th episode, and we're going to do things a little different around here today. It is my very first panel discussion. The topic is movement and exercise. Who would have guessed? Okay, so I basically have 3 lovely ladies on today's episode with me, and they are all coincidentally long-standing participants in my weekly movement class, and they're all here to have a group dialogue about movement and what was life like for them perfect storm. What was their fitness levels like? What was their movement practice? What was important to them? And then we talk about how and when they felt ready to implement movement and exercise into their rewiring and healing practices. We chat about how movement has played an integral role in their healing journey and how it's helped them in mind, body, and soul. And there's so much more to this discussion. It's a really fun chat with Susan, Glenda, and Allison. Whee! So let's welcome them to the show. All right, I have Susan and Glenda on the line today to have a really fun discussion around movement. And for everyone who's listening, this is going to be my first small group / panel discussion for the podcast. So I'm really excited to have Susan and Glenda both here. Susan, maybe to start us out, you could just tell us what tools you've been using for your recovery and retraining, and maybe how long you've been in your recovery period.
Sure. Yeah. Well, first, Chaz, thank you so much for this invite and for wanting to do a panel. I think this is such a really wonderful idea, and especially for those of us that are still retraining. So, yeah, I'm just was a year, excuse me, so my annual anniversary is August, so I'm a year plus doing DNRS for my brain retraining. And did you want me to specifically talk about where I am with movement at this time, or is that enough? That's good.
Just like,
we're good.
Yeah, so we know you're about 15 months into your DNRS experience, a brain retraining program.
Yeah.
That's good. And Glenda, how about you?
Hi, Chaz. Thanks again also for having us. I think as a retrainer, I've really enjoyed hearing other retrainers' stories. So I'm really happy that Susan and I get a chance to share ours as well today. So I started DNRS in January 2020. So I just celebrated my 2-year DNRS anniversary.
Ooh, congratulations. 2 years. Are you still like fully committed, like full on all the structure, or have you eased up a bit and kind of incorporated your own flow into it?
I think at about a year and a half, I started to sort of adapt what my practice looked like. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm not doing the same, I guess, hour of rounds daily, but I've added in so many new tools that have helped me sort of achieve the same results.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That that's really cool. And part of it's interesting because part of what we'll talk about today is how we began movement practice and how we were able to discern when to implement it and what felt right for us. And so I'm sure there's a level of you know understanding then that you went through when you implemented or decided how to discern what you wanted to add into your program and kind of make it unique for you.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so I think a great way to start is by going into just to get a background idea of where we were at, in our lives and maybe prior to our quote unquote perfect storm. But curious to know for both of you, was exercise, fitness, or movement, however you prefer to call it, a regular part of your life at any point prior to your perfect storm, or when you were at like what would be like the height of your symptoms, where you really started diving deep into this healing work? Susan, you could answer first if you'd like.
Yeah, sure. So prior to any kind of perfect storm, I kind of had a slow roll into my perfect storm. Prior to that kind of time period, I was a regular kind of yogi. I probably for 20 years had been doing yoga and going to a class at least once a week, and would do it, on my own at home. I would have a practice, and I also did a lot of walking and hiking. I just love being out in nature. So those were kind of my two primary go-tos. I was never really a gym person or a strength training person. It was more those two. Um, and I since I guess starting brain rewiring, have had some epiphanies about those two forms of exercise that I'm happy to share now, or we can wait. But yeah, that was kind of my go-to prior to my brain rewiring process.
I think it's a great time to share what your epiphanies have been.
All right, cool. Let's do it. All right. So for me, for yoga, I'm now with brain rewiring and realizing how associations work. Right. When I first started yoga, it was right after I had had three kids close in age. I have twin boys and my daughter just 16 months apart. And so when I first started yoga, they were babies, and I went really for me time, and for stress relief. And it just so happened that um, I also enjoyed the poses, I enjoyed the practice, and I got good feedback about it. And prior to that, I just was never an athlete. I was never a super athletic person. I'm tall and lanky and uncoordinated. And so I have all these belief systems right around that. And so I was never a quote unquote athlete. And so to find something that kind of gave me both kind of a sanctuary for stress relief and some me time, and also a chance to use my body in a positive way and get positive feedback and feel good about the movement, really started me on this yoga journey. And then, later as the years went by, I would always look for the right teacher, and it had to be a gentle teacher. So it just speaks a lot to how I was really looking for stress relief um, through all these years, more than focusing on it as an exercise tool for my body. And so I've been really, since starting the movement classes that I do with you, I've loved feeling just the movement, just my body, just focusing on the strength of my body instead of all that yoga brought, and just keeping it simple. I'm part of my brain rewiring was keeping things simple. And so just having that time when I do movement now to just be focusing on physical strength, has just been so supportive for me and so good for the way I feel more now, connected to my body and my strength and my confidence and all of these things that continue to improve as a result. So that was one epiphany, is just really once I started rewiring, not having any desire to do yoga, and I wasn't sure why that was. And I've since realized is unraveling these associations that I was using it for different reasons. I wasn't using it really for to build strength within my physical body. So that was definitely a big epiphany for me. And not that I still don't do yoga occasionally, I do, and I'm sure I'll continue to here and there, but I just look at it very differently now than what I realized I was using it for.
That's awesome. I did forget to mention too, for everyone listening, that I know all of you wonderful ladies because of my movement class that I sometimes talk about on here. So yeah, you guys have kind of all been with me from almost the beginning when I first launched it almost a year ago, which is awesome. So that's really cool. Glenda, what about you? How where were you at with the idea of exercise, fitness, and movement in your life prior?
Hmm. I was actually a very active person until I was no longer able to engage in many of the activities. So, in my teens and 20s, I was a hiker, a skier. I did synchronized swimming. I was a swimming coach. I kayaked. I did everything outdoors you could possibly do. I was very active. And then in my 30s, when I had my kids, we would be outdoors a lot doing hikes and swimming and bike riding, walks, jogs, all sorts of things. I was even in a triathlon late in my 20s. So once, I guess, limbic system impairment came into my life, I still tried to push myself, but that's where I moved a little bit more into yoga. I know Susan mentioned that, and Pilates and things that were a little bit more gentle, until eventually I had to give up many of those things until I started retraining 2 years ago. And so, excuse me. Yeah. And so I don't know if you want me to go into how I used movement in the beginning of my training or how I reintroduced movement at this point or later
Oh yeah,
on.
we'll get it. We're gonna get it. We're totally gonna get into all that good stuff. Yay!
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I mean, basically, you were extremely active, and then you kind of had to
Hmm.
start shifting what you were doing, and then eventually you had to just get to a point where you couldn't. You had to kind of make a choice to like eliminate most of it,
Hmm.
not all
Yeah.
of it. Yeah,
Essentially, I had to stop pretty much everything that was movement or activity based.
gotcha. Okay, and we actually just had another guest join us for the discussion. Yay, Allison, welcome to the show. Um, we were just talking about um, how our life was prior to like our perfect storm, and if movement or fitness and exercise was a regular part of our life, and how that shifted or changed.
Yeah, I have been on my healing journey for 2.5 years. Started using the DNRS program. And I did have a movement practice prior to developing an illness. I would swim and go to the gym and do aerobics and strength training and yoga, hiking and walking. And I'm sorry, the question was, how has it changed during illness or post illness?
Just sense like we were just wondering and talking about, like, for example, Susan did like yoga, and she had some epiphanies in terms of why she was doing yoga versus why she chooses movement now. And Glenda was extremely active, and over time she slowly found herself having to shift into different activities that were more gentle until she almost had to basically do away with all of them for the time being, for the beginning part of her healing journey. So I don't know
Mm.
if you were able to continue all of your practices through the whole experience, or if there was a pause that where you found yourself needing to take a break.
Yeah. Well, throughout my illness, I wasn't able to do any sort of movement practice. Um, and so actually when I started my healing journey, that was one of the first things I trained with. Um, and I started walking. The first thing I did was, visualize it, and then walking around the cul-de-sac um, was my intro into moving. And I found that movement and strengthening my body physically has really been my first inroad into healing. Um, And it's been really amazing how far I've come with that.
Okay. And so at what point in your healing journey, because you said you're 2.5 years in, you did need to take a break from fitness and physical activity for a set period of time. But at what point in your journey did you feel you were really ready to incorporate movement and exercise again? And like, what helped you to discern that you were ready and know that you felt ready?
Mm. Well, it was so incremental, like super, super incremental. And I think I just felt so motivated by my goals to keep going farther, in particular walking, and knowing all the things that I wanted to do with my life and my body. Um, and, there's definitely many times where where it was challenging, where I'm, walking and I had to do, use my opposites, my mind body techniques, to strengthen my mind and tell myself and my body, no, I can do this. I've done this before. I'm going to do it now. And I can actually go farther than I think or feel like I can. And then, for sure there's times where I it's tricky having to discern, listening to my body, how can I best honor my body now? Do I need to push through this and, push my training zone a bit, or is this a time for rest? Is my body telling me, no, it's okay to, take a break and use rest as a form of healing as well.
You make such a good point. I know that's been such a critical component for myself as well, is really getting in tune and like what you just said, knowing when is honoring my body pushing through versus resting. Because that's a hard one to sometimes discern, especially at first.
Right.
Susan, what do you think about that?
Oh my gosh, discerning. Is this, where am I in my training zone in any given moment, and what would feel good and what would be too much of a push versus a stretch? And what's tricky, has been tricky for me, and I'm assuming others can relate, we'll see, is sometimes doing the movement would make me feel better, so my brain might be telling me, no way, and yeah, I'll do it. And I feel 100 times better afterwards. So it was a lot of, for me, having to work through that, and really understand what was LSI and what was physically possible. And I still sometimes have to play with that. It's gotten a lot easier, but that was definitely a interesting time for me to really work through. And 99% of the time I felt better from the movement.
What are indicators for you though? Like if you because there's sometimes like maybe the brain is perceiving something as bad, but we know it actually is good for us, like walking, for example. It's so primal in nature and our bodies really were designed to move. And back in the day, like people moved a lot often. They walked sometimes, 13 miles a day. Like that would just be like a normal day for people. And so we know inherently that all of our bodies are designed to move, but the brain sometimes can be a little trickster. So for you, how did you decide, if like what were you looking for in your body or in your mind as an indicator of whether or not this was something that you should push through or step back?
I honestly had to do a lot of acting greater than I felt and really trust the process. And I too, I think Allison mentioned the same, and is I really used movement in the very beginning of my training as a way to really work trust the process and trust that had been prior to that, I had been waiting years, it seemed, to feel better in order to do whatever, in order to move, in order to live my life again, in order to do whatever. I was always waiting to feel better. And if in the past, if I'd feel better, I'd do something and then I wouldn't feel good again. And it was this constant, roller coaster I'm sure most of us can relate to. So this was my first real challenge to myself to say, you know what, we're not going to wait until we feel better. We, in order to do this, we're just going to do this. And we're going to actually prove, it was a way for me to really build that confidence with the process of not waiting, but doing it anyway. And so potentially there were times where I pushed past the training zone, but for the most part, within the movement activity, like if it was a walk or one of your movement classes or something I was doing on my own, I would just scale back within the movement, but I would always do the movement. Whatever it looked like, I would do something, just to honor myself and to really work with the process.
Right. That makes sense. Showing your brain like, hey, I'm still showing up and I'm still doing this.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to both Allison and Susan in that if we wait till our body feels good, then it's not going to happen. And I do remember very early on with DNRS, I believe the DVD said something about, if you feel like taking a nap, get up and take a 5-minute walk. And so I decided to do that quite early on, probably week 3. And I would just head outside and walk around this little park right by my house and come back. And almost always, 90% of the time, I wouldn't feel I would need a nap afterwards. I would feel invigorated from the fresh air. And at first, it was really slow, small steps, maybe 5 minutes. But eventually, it built that trust in my brain that this is safe, this is good for you. And so, there are some days where I give myself permission to rest for the day, and I don't do a walk and I don't do other physical intense movements. But then most days it's like, okay, go for that 20-minute walk. And most of the time now, it feels really good after.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And going back to your question, Chaz, about like, when did you know you were ready or you could go farther with your movement? I have to say, one really helpful and amazing part of my healing has been people in my life normalizing things for me and just really reminding me, like, yeah, like most people are tired after this kind of exertion, or, I went to Disneyland. It was one of my first big things after I started healing, and walked at 10 that day. And I remember friends telling me, like, yeah, everyone gets tired after walking all day in Disneyland, and just reminding me, like, or I had a coach who was a runner in high school and college. And she said, yeah, like athletes take days of rest in between training. And so just to get that gauge of like, when you're in this healing journey, it's so hard to remember what is normal and what's realistic. And so that's been incredibly helpful for me as well, to just have grace for myself and to have that check, with other people in my life.
That's such a good point. I love that you brought that up, because that is so true. We do sometimes get lost in the muck after a while. It can be hard to discern what's normal, what's not normal, like what is okay, when is this a limbic response, and it can be, yeah, that can, like, having other people to help normalize that is such a profound thing, because if we otherwise we can go down that fear trap where it's like, oh, I did too much. We start making those stories like, oh, I'm tired, it was just Disneyland. I should the shoulds, the expectations of our body that we can put on ourselves and what we should be doing. And when the reality is, we might be creating this fear or this unrealistic false expectation, because what we're experiencing is actually like quite normal. So that's a really good point. I'm glad you brought that up. And yeah, I'm curious, like, because you kind of all each had a different like background in what was fitness or what movement practices you had for you. So I know that we mentioned how all of you guys did my movement class, and it sounds like that was a little different of an experience for you than what you had done in the past. So I'm curious, while we're talking about this, what made you what made you like, what piqued your curiosity to want to try it, and what about it has really resonated with you and your body that has kept you going for as long as you have all continued to show up and do that work? I don't know if anybody has the desire to go first.
I could jump in. This is obviously Susan, or maybe not obviously. So I initially, for me, it was because you were within the community of brain rewiring and brain retraining that I felt that it was an entry point that felt really comfortable for me. So that was a big plus for me. and then what kept me going is just how much better I feel from doing the exercise and the movements. And gosh, I learned so much during. I mean, one thing that really stands out that was so different than other things I've done is just the constant reminder to smile and laugh while you're moving. Such a big difference than other movement classes that I've ever taken. They're certainly not yoga, right? So yeah, I mean, just and then just being mindful to watch what belief systems come up. Like, it's just, and that was my own internal process. You weren't necessarily coaching us with that, but it just allowed me a space to really feel safe to do movement, smile, laugh. Totally okay to, fall down if I'm feeling unbalanced, whatever, right? And enjoy it. And then to be in community too, where all of us kind of are there, kind of, it's in support of each other, and a common goal was just really exponentially added to the experience as well. So that's why I keep coming, and they just keep getting stronger despite the process, which, as we all know, has the ups and downs. I get stronger and stronger over time, and my confidence is building, and life's expanded so much more since I've been consistent with strength movement training.
Yeah, I've had a very similar experience to Susan. I started your movement class about a year after I began retraining, and it just really felt like the right time to start adding to just the walks and stretching I was doing. And it was really nice to know that you were in the DNRS community, and everybody in the class was coming from a very similar background. And so there was some safety there and familiarity of people that I'd seen in other groups. And so initially, I don't even think I was able to do all of the movements, but I was so curious just the kind of movements you were doing, like across the body and smiling and the crawling, things I had never done in previous practices. So it kept me going, and I would try the movements. Sometimes I would only do 4 or 5 reps at the beginning, and then I would just sit and breathe. And eventually, after a few months, I felt I could do almost all of the movements, and I always felt better afterwards. I just, the class for me is Friday mornings, and so the rest of the day, I always just feel lighter and stronger and fresher. And if I do miss a week, I definitely feel that I notice it. And the great thing is I'm familiar enough with a lot of the movements that I can do them on my own now as well, and that's really benefited me throughout the week.
I love that. And that's the goal. I want you guys to that's always been the goal, for you guys to build this toolbox and be in your own power to be able to do these things. And it's, yeah, like you guys said, it's great doing them in community and with each other. And, it's great holding space for us to all be silly and laugh and giggle and laugh at ourselves. Like Susan said, you don't get that everywhere. Some things just become so serious. But yeah, it's definitely nice to be empowered to learn these tools, just like all of our other tools for brain retraining. We have all these movement tools, and then to be able to implement them on our own is very empowering. So that's really awesome. Allison, what is your experience?
Yeah, I feel like it was so long ago that I first heard about your class, and I'm trying to remember. I mean, I'm always up for learning new things and connecting with others. I think I remember just being really intrigued when I first started DNRS and looking forward to a complete recovery and healing. I remember thinking, gosh, one of the things I'd love to get out of this is just coming back to my body, coming back into my body, feeling safe in my body. And, I think a lot of us can relate to, after being ill for so long, kind of this major disconnect with the physical self, and really having just negative feelings towards that. And so when it came time to healing, I just had this deep desire to reconnect to my body and feel at home in it, and have a positive relationship with it, and to, I don't know how else to say it other than and not just a physical flexibility, but just desiring this, um, just feeling really integrated and relaxed, and comfortable being in my own skin. And I think just one of the things that I've found incredibly helpful is doing the movement with other people and that community aspect, and like doing the work together. It's really fun and it's really inspiring. And I think it just helps to, um, impact me on a deeper level than just doing movement on my own. It's also great accountability. Um, and like Glenda was saying, using what I've learned from you in the class outside of class, even the other night I was having, a flare, and I just, had this moment like, how do I want to approach this right now? Do I want to approach it from top down, like doing visualizations or some mental practices, or do I want to approach it from bottom up? And I felt like my body was really telling me like it needed to release, some adrenaline and release some maybe stored trauma. And so I went for a little run, actually, which is pretty unusual for me. And I did some of the crawling forwards and backwards and sideways, and walking all the different ways backwards and sideways, and walking my feet differently. And it was like magic. I felt like it really helped me to get outside of my head and release what needed to be released out of my body.
Ooh, that's awesome. So you felt that was the right choice, and all said and done.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think, just through the healing of my mind and my body, one of the biggest gifts has been, being able to listen better to my body and trust it. And that's totally what I did that night. And it's so satisfying to, the more you do it, the more you realize, yeah, I listened to my body. I did what I felt like it was telling me, and it was the right thing. I felt like a different person after that.
That goes so deep, and we're going to talk about how deep movement is as medicine in a minute here, but that does go deep because it's literally creating like internal trust. Every time you're making those choices, you're literally developing this deeper level of trust, like with your own self, and I think that, again, a lot of people can probably relate to, if they found themselves in chronic pain or illness, we've probably at some level lost that trust with ourselves. Like we didn't remember exactly how to trust ourselves. Maybe we made choices that we weren't always really in tune, connected, and honoring our body, and we had to reestablish that trust again. And that comes, slowly over time through making these actions that really do support us, like deeply and fully. So it's just crazy how it just spirals, and the domino effect that it can have, by you just like making a choice and really getting in tune with, am I going to top down or bottom up? And then like holding that space for your full self, and then having that experience that was like, oh, that was exactly what I needed. I know Susan had some insight that she wanted to share too about this.
Well, actually, I wanted to thank Allison for that tip of asking my question, do I want to go top down or bottom up? That was brilliant. So thank you. I will be using that. What a great question to ask. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. It is really right. And I think, there's a really big value in the way that the structure of DNRS is at the beginning, where we really just focus on top down, because we are trying to create this level of calm in our limbic system. But I think what a lot of people experience over time is that we start to learn that as things start to calm down, and then we start to learn these other tools, we do have this choice, and we get to really be discerning as to what choice will be most supportive to us in each moment. So as I was saying about movement being medicine on so many dimensions, I would love to hear from you ladies, to share with the audience how movement, and this doesn't have to be movement just in my class, but any form of movement that you've been engaging in, through this journey, how has it affected your relationship with yourself and your body? Allison's kind of already given a little insight on that, but, do do you feel like learning these new ways to move and realizing you're able to move in ways you didn't know was possible, and realizing you have strength that you're gaining and you're so adaptable, like, are you experiencing a newer relationship with your body that's more supportive and healthy?
Sure. I'd have to say, even before I started your movement class, I started going to dance parties in the DNRS community. And for me, that was so huge. I've always loved music. I've always loved dancing, but it had been years since I'd actually danced. And it just gave me the confidence and the energy again, even if it meant watching people dance and eventually dancing one or two songs. That for me really just rebuilt confidence in my body that it could move in a really fun and joyful way. The other thing that's really helped me is just the movement I do in the laughter yoga classes. And, moving your arms a lot around, which was something that I was limited in doing for many years. And just to be able to move my body in a really animated and fun way has built my confidence, my strength, my energy, and just knowing that I can enjoy life again through and in my body. And so I feel like all of these tools together have really just widened my view of how I'm using movement to heal my body and to rewire my brain.
I can piggyback on that. Yeah, one of the first things I did as well in healing is I started working with a physical therapist to help me with my incremental training. And, I did some strength training. And as I continued with that practice at home, I sensed this really great sense of confidence that I was getting from strengthening my muscles. And it was just, it was really incredible to feel that effect of that bottom up approach. And then later on down the road, I started paddle boarding, and that was something that I don't know that I would have had the confidence to do even before my illness, to go out and do some solo paddle boarding. And there's something about standing up tall, almost, in a warrior posture, to take that stance of strength and confidence, and to do a new kind of movement that I hadn't done in the past, was really empowering and just really reinforced to myself like what I can do and how far I was going.
I love that. That's such awesome evidence of like what's possible, not only to like work towards getting back to where we were, but now you're getting to do new things that, as you said, you might have not even had the courage or the confidence to do prior to like the onset of your symptoms. So that's awesome. And paddleboarding is one of my favorites. Something so special about being out on the open water like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so healing.
Good job, Allison. What about you, Susan?
Yeah, paddleboarding is on my list. So thanks for that inspiration. Yeah, for me, I would say I've been genuinely surprised and delighted at the amount of like that the movement has contributed to my daily life. Just the confidence and just daily things that happen. I had a new office furniture that I came in a box and I just built it, where I would have deferred to my husband. Like I just have more confidence physically to take things on, even driving longer distances. Like it just contributes to many different parts of my life that I'm finding where I used to question them before. Do I want to do that, or can I, or is that too much? I just do them now, so it's just expanded my daily life. And, even way back in the beginning, it was just even honestly emptying and filling the dishwasher, just having the energy and the whatever to do that, or cook, and all the things that I do. It's just, I just do things now, whereas before I would question them. And then recently, I just signed up for a pottery wheel class, which I'd been wanting to try for years. And, I would just didn't feel strong enough, quite honestly. And so I just signed up. I mean, it wasn't even a thought that I wouldn't have this. It's a 3-hour class, having to use the whole upper body and the whole thing. And it wasn't even a question whether I just did it. I just signed up. So lots of changes in my daily life and the options that are available to me now, and not even second guessing things, which is wonderful.
I love that so much. I am curious, okay, and I'm curious for all, what all of you think about this and your insight, but do you find that, and I don't know what your confidence as far as your physical body, not just the strength, but when you look in the mirror, the person you see reflecting back to you, your confidence and ease with your physical beauty and the structure and forms of your bodies. I don't know if you had that and lost it, or had it all along, or if any of your movement practices and the act of building strength helped you to see your physical being in a new light. But I'd love to hear if any of you guys have insight on that experience. Maybe Allison could take the lead.
Yeah, I guess I'll be a little bit vulnerable here, but during my illness, I gained some weight, and so as I was healing, I thought, I would like to feel healthy in that way, and it was a motivator to move and change my diet, but I did it in a way that weight loss would be just an added bonus. But my goal was that, I'm going to approach this and just appreciate that I'm doing this to be healthier. And so as I've grown stronger and become more fit, and seeing, what I'm capable of, that also has been a confidence booster. And I feel like the energy shows, and even early on in my healing journey, I'd have, people reflect back to me that I looked different. There's a light that I think shines shines from the hope and also the movement and the practice, and I see that in myself as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, I feel like that's a really wonderful compliment when other people can begin to see that light bulb shining within somebody, but then for you to see it in yourself is, I think, even more profound. It's a real gift. What about Glenda?
Yeah, for me, during my perfect storm in 2019, I was actually severely underweight, and I was down to about maybe 7 foods. So when I started DNRS, that was one of the first things that I noticed. About 4 months in, I gained 10 pounds, and I got color back in my cheeks, and my hair started growing in, healthy. And right away, my family and people who knew me well were just complimenting how healthy I looked, and I could stand up straight again. And I just looked like I'd come back to life. So it was very noticeable. And now I'd say 2 years in, it's more in my abilities and my strength and confidence. So when I go out in public now, I'm smiling, my shoulders are back, I feel strong, I feel happy. And so it's a complete transformation, not only in the inside, but I think on the outside as well.
Yeah, so it's probably similar to Glenda, where I was on the underside of where I needed to be with my weight when I first started my brain retraining, and down to very few foods. And so I'm still at the part of my training where I'm really enjoying food and working to continue. I have a few things still left, and so I'm loving that in parallel to adding all this yummy food back and expanding my food choices, I'm also doing the movement because I feel differently about my body. I feel stronger and more solid and more just filled in, versus that I've gained weight, which I know I have, but it's just a different feeling because I have the two going on at the same time. So I'm kind of enjoying feeling more solid instead of thinking of it as a weight gain. I feel just more solid, and it's really worked wonders to help me at this stage of where I'm at We'll see where it goes from here, but that's where I'm at currently.
I just had another aside that came to mind, which is I think from this healing, it's made me be aware of things like my posture and how I'm holding myself and how that affects how I show up in interactions and even show up for myself. I mean, it was just recently I was in the grocery store and I noticed that I was slouching but I wasn't even aware of it because I think that's normally how I walk and hold myself. And so I stood up tall, I put my shoulders back, and instantly I felt, just strong and confident. And I felt a smile come just, naturally without even forcing it. And I think that's been another huge gift of this healing that, I don't know if I would have been aware of that type of thing if I hadn't gone through illness and healing. It's just to be aware of how I'm holding myself and how that affects me emotionally and mentally and my confidence and how I relate to others.
I love that. I love that you bring that up because yeah, it's another one of those, top down or bottom up things. It's like, okay, so we can rewire top down confidence and we can do things like be aware, and for the brain, all the brain trainers out there, the lingo catching your pops or pathways of your past, like interrupting negative thought loops that we don't want to entertain anymore. And we do this, it's all about, we know it's about repetition. We do it over and over and over until we have a new pattern that has been created and taken place of the old ones that we have redirected 1,000 times. And it's the same in the physical body, that top or that bottom up approach. We can do I mean, I'm not sure what your guys' thoughts are, but I'm truly of the belief that, like, if I can do all the brain retraining in the world, but if I still like hold myself in this like very closed off, like rounded shoulders, rounded back, like closed chest posture, I'm not going to feel like my best self. But when I can open up, I instantly feel a mental shift. So it very much like the body affects the mind and the mind affects the body. Like, my understanding is that mind body is truly one entity in all said and done, interacting simultaneously, impacting each other constantly. So I love, and as you guys have experienced in class, I love, like, yeah, we don't need to take things too seriously. We can laugh and we can play, but we can also pay attention to detail, and we can work on adjusting things like our posture, one repetition at a time, over and over and over again. Because the more that, like that moment you had, Allison, where you noticed and you were aware and you made that shift, you might need to do that 1,000 times, but eventually, just like we've learned through brain retraining, it's just going to become your automatic and you're not even going to think about it anymore. You're going to be your default setting. So I love being able to look at bottom up, top down, and how I can impact both ways, my entire physical and mental, emotional being. So, yeah, that's just kind of my little feeling on that. So I'm really glad you brought that up. And I know that I love your guys' shares about the body, and just Allison had the experience more where she gained some weight. Susan and Glenda were more in agreement, not agreement per se, but understanding of one another, where they were more on the leaner side. And I very much relate to you, Allison, where prior to my perfect storm, I was heavily involved in the gym and an athlete. I was very active, working out sometimes 6 days a week, multiple times a day. I loved at the time, like, I was lean, fit, strong, muscular. And when I had to take a step back, I lost so much of that structure. And I truly believe that it was for me, in the sense that before, my self-worth was so dependent on my physical image. I needed to have a certain like look. I needed to have a certain muscular definition. I needed to have such like lean abs. And if I didn't have that, then I wasn't worthy. I wasn't beautiful. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't valuable enough. And something that I've learned through this is, like, I'm as I like lost that definition and gained some weight, it was an opportunity for me to step back and say, am I not worthy of being loved and valuable and beautiful and seen, even if I don't have that physique that I thought was what I needed to have? And so that's been like my big thing is like, hey, this is really teaching me to step back and say, no, Chasmith, like you get to love yourself and see beauty in yourself no matter what, like this is your chance to finally not attach to some idealized version of what standard you hold for your body, and to put it through all this excess activity that you're not honoring what you actually need. So that's been kind of my take, and what I've learned is like I get to just love me through all of it, even if I don't have this idealized body image, you know. I'm curious. Oh, Allison, do you want to share?
Yeah, I just really appreciate you sharing that, Chaz. And I think that's still such a growing edge for me. Is just learning and believing that I am worthy just for being who I am, um, and I don't need to base my worthiness based on abilities or appearance, um, and I that's just been such a huge um, gift of healing to approach movement um, as as a privilege and a gift, and just happy that, like I think Susan was saying earlier, that I can do things without having to pre-assess or think about it. Like if I want to go outside and go for a walk, I can do that, and without even like a purpose in mind, but just for pure enjoyment.
Right, exactly. Not to define worth or productivity or anything else. And yeah, I was gonna say to you, like, it's one of those things where we can ask ourselves, um, I'm beautiful, I see my beauty and I love me in like in spite of, or whether or not, like indifferent to the outcome, like can I look at my body and love it for exactly what it is? That doesn't mean that I have to stay exactly this way and never have physical goals again, but can I love me where I'm at, and then through that love act in a way that then honors and supports me as I make these choices moving into my future? Like I can have a goal to lose 5 pounds, but can I love me with, even if I don't lose that 5 pounds, can I still just love me? I think that's a huge thing for a lot of us is, can we just love ourselves where we're at? And I know something that I use for myself, and this might work for you, Allison, and people listening, is I like really try to look in the mirror and I think to myself like, okay, I don't have the body I used to, and I don't have the capabilities yet that I used to physically, but like my body has carried me through so much in life, and we have gotten so far, and look at what we've overcome, the obstacles and the hurdles and what we've gone through. Like what it like, and it's just celebrating it, like in having like just compassion for it, like the body, like, oh my gosh, like you are a beautiful gift because this is what we've gone through and it's okay. Like we're here. I think that's so awesome to be able to, kind of think about those things and just, yeah, get to that place. So I know, like I said, for me, it's constantly a reminder of, I think that part of my journey was learning how to love myself in spite of, and to just love myself, yeah, no matter what the physical was. And yeah, I think Allison, you wanted to say something on that again.
Oh, I just love that so much, and I love what you said about um, loving who we are now. We may not have the same body or the same abilities that we had before, um, but just learning to love who we are now, and the version that we are now, and which is so much better than it's ever been before, right? Because of everything that we're learning and all the brave, courageous things we're doing with our minds and our bodies.
Yeah, and we're going through some shit. We have, like a lot of people, like that's this journey, like it, for a lot of people who find themselves in this world, who are drawn to things like DNRS or the Gupta program or any retraining program, there's a reason we're here and we've gone through it, and it's important to have that compassion and acknowledge like what we've been through. I think Susan has something that she wants to share too.
Yeah, so while you two were speaking, I thought about just kind of pre-DNRS and just the whole like acceptance piece, and before starting brain rewiring, there was such a fix-it mentality. Something's broken, I need to fix it. Something's broken, I need to fix it. And the panic and the fear, all that goes along with that. And to let that go and just accept all of it has been such a journey. And so doing that even now on the other side, as I'm continuing to move through the other side of just accepting where I'm at, there's nothing to fix. It's a journey, it's a process, and just just getting into that acceptance. For me, that's what I heard as well as you guys were speaking, is to let go of thinking there's anything to fix.
100%. Yeah. And I do believe, like, for me, my mindset is that movement really, really can help support this, that mindset and that practice. Like, I think movement just, gosh, it's medicine. It can bring us back into our bodies, into our spirit, into our confidence. There's so much potential, and it's hard because coming from the fitness industry, it can be so convoluted and often there's there's a lot of dogma in the fitness community, and there's a lot of like, oh, you need to do it this way to be healthy, or you need to do this, or you need to do that, or this is important, or you can't not do this. And I'm like of the mindset that there's space for all of it, and it's really comes down to like what brings you joy, what makes you feel good, what do you believe in, what feels right for you. And yeah, just not to, I just, the worst is when somebody goes and pushes themselves to do something because they think they should do it, or they need to do it, or they have to do it, or it's the only right way. And it's like, no, if you don't love it, then do something different.
That's one thing that I've learned so much, that I've gained from you and in our classes together, Chaz, and also just some other people in the movement industry that I've spoken with, is learning or reversing that belief that a lot of us have, which is like no pain, no gain. and that, we don't have to do exercise or movements in a certain way, but to really listen. I found myself really listening to my body. And like I said earlier, just honoring like what feels right for me in this moment, what feels good, like what movement brings me joy, and to not force things, and to just really do everything through a lens of love and respect and honoring my body.
Yes, absolutely. Glenda, do you have any insight that you wanted to share on this?
Yeah, I really resonate with what everyone is sharing. I think for me, it's been maybe less about my physical appearance, but more about just my confidence and regaining confidence in my abilities to be able to do the things I want to do and be the person I want to be. And so that's really where I've found so much growth and change, is just how movement has given me that confidence back to say, I don't have to identify as that sick person that I did for so many years. I don't have to explain myself to people. I can be, who I choose to be, and I can be confident, and I can be, do the things I love to do. So if I want to sing outside, I can. If I want to dance, it doesn't matter who's watching anymore. I do it for myself and not for, I guess, thinking about what other people might perceive me as. So that's been a really big part of my rewiring journey.
I love that. Yes, all of that. Because we don't need to explain ourselves. We never have needed to. We never will need to. And that's definitely one of the big, beautiful gifts that has come out of this. And speaking of, like, you were saying how like you can just do whatever like you desire and what you want to and what your goals are. And that was actually one of the questions I wanted to go over with you guys. Is I'm curious if through the experience of your rewiring journey and incorporating movement into your practice, do any of you have any goals right now in terms of movement or fitness, like anything that you want to accomplish for for whatever reason. Maybe it's for no other reason than just the fun of it, but if anyone has any kind of like aspirations for the new year and coming into this new year, that they're like, I want to achieve this, I want to do that, I want to, do this with my fitness journey, because sometimes it's like we learn new things and we're like, oh, I didn't even know this was possible before, but now I want to accomplish this. So if anyone has anything they want to share to that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm like, oh yeah, I need to, or not need to, but I would like to think bigger picture. I think with physical movement, I've been so in the present lately and just taking it day by day. But one thing that I haven't done and that I visualized a lot through DNRS is going on hikes. I mean, I've gone on some short hikes, but I would love to go on like a half day hike or even like a full day hike. That would be super fun and exciting. And I know I've really reconnected with nature and moving outdoors since healing, and that's kind of always been there. But that's been one of the most exciting aspects of coming back to myself and coming back to life, is reconnecting with nature and getting out there on the water, in the trees, on the trails. I don't, one thing that I said recently, I went on a short little walk run the other night, and, earlier on in healing, I used to run before my perfect storm. And then, now at this stage in my life, many years later, I thought, I don't think I can do that anymore. I didn't really have much interest, but when I went for the spontaneous run the other night, I was like, maybe this will be in my future. This is interesting. Like this feels really exciting. So, I'm interested in exploring that some more now that I've experienced it a bit.
I love it. Running is so primal. Do you have when you do your visualizations of your like half day hike, do you have any specific mountain range or just park or, location that you envision?
I don't know that I have. I tend to, I think in my visualizations, I get really into the senses. So I remember one thing that I would do is just like imagine the sound of my feet on like a rocky trail, or the sound of like bark or pine cones crunching, and the feeling of the ground underneath my feet, and the smells, and so nothing specific, but I know when I had visualized things in such deep specific detail, when I get out and do it for the first time, it's the most amazing mountaintop high experience. So but I've definitely seen inspiring photos from people in my life of hikes that they've taken that I have yet to do, and I do have a list of places I'd like to go, but I don't know that I visualize those specifically.
Okay, my goal is Angel's Landing. Angel's Landing is in Zion in Utah.
I would happily do that with you. I have not been, and it's gorgeous.
Yeah, that's one of my visualizations that was one of my favorites. I love it. So it will happen for sure. And hey, speaking of everyone loving to move and like kind of do movement and exercise in community, we're still holding the vision of a group paddleboarding trip someday.
I'm there. You say the place and the date.
Group paddleboarding, yay. Glenda, what about you? Do you have any like specific fitness movement goals that have kind of simmered?
I do. I actually have many. And some of them I've started incrementally training on. So one thing I used to really love is snowshoeing, and I live close to the mountains. And so I've actually been incrementally training. We had some snowfall for about 2 weeks here. It's gone now, but I would get out in my snow boots, and I would, I did sort of some walking in the snow to prepare. And I'm hoping to go in a few weeks actually with a fellow retrainer who lives close by. So I've been preparing for that for quite a while with visualizations and walks. And yeah, I absolutely love hiking. So I'm hoping in the summer, even just to do a 30-minute or 45-minute hike with my family. The other thing is I bought an electric bike in the fall because biking was something I used to love doing, and I had to stop doing that a few years ago. So I was able to use it a couple of times before the weather sort of turned here, but I'm really excited about going on longer bike rides, maybe putting it in the car and taking it to other parts of the city and to trails. So yeah, I'm really excited about being outdoors, moving and doing things that I loved doing for so many years, and coming back to them. And like Allison was mentioning, I feel like I'm approaching them, or I'm going to approach them in such a deeper, more appreciative way. In the past, I think I took movement for granted and I did all these things. And now it's like, yeah, you notice the crunch of those pine cones under your feet, and how does the sun feel on your skin, and the breeze and the smells in the air, and just the entire experience just becomes so much more alive and just full of good feelings, because you're so appreciative for what you have again.
Mhm. Absolutely. I can totally relate to that. Just like every time I just even think about going on a bike ride, and then when I do, it's like, oh, I love every aspect of it. Like you said, like I love the feeling of the breeze on my face and my hair, like the little wispy hairs, like tickling my skin because they're blowing, and the sunshine beaming down. And like, I love when I can get on the beach and I can just smell the salt water. Oh, it's just different. It's different for sure. Susan, how about you?
Yeah, I'm loving everything you guys are sharing. For me, it's more just as opportunities show up to just be able to say yes more. Like last summer, I did more swimming, and just like you guys described, the swimming was just like I've never experienced. I just felt the water in a completely different way, and so just being able to say yes to swimming and kayaking and biking and all the things that come up naturally in my life that I've had to say no to, is what I'm looking forward to most. And we live right on a bike trail that goes, I live near DC, so it goes all the way from DC to I don't even know how many miles to kind of the country. And so my husband and I have talked about doing a nice long bike ride. So lots of things to look forward to, and just again being able to say yes more, and just enjoy just being outdoors, and yeah, just saying yes, honestly.
Saying yes, I love that. I really do. That's like, it's so simple but so profound. I just want to say yes more to all the things.
Hmm.
um, okay, so speaking of saying yes more, I want to get your guys' advice for everyone who's listening, because maybe we have fellow retrainers out there, or maybe there's people who are listening who aren't necessarily in a brain retraining program, but they've been doing expressive writing or like emotional release work for like TMS pain, and maybe they're at that place where all of us once were, where we were kind of uncertain, like, is it time to start movement? I want to move, but I'm kind of afraid to move. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't want to do too much. What is too much? So if there's anyone who's listening that's just kind of at that place where it seems like we've all been familiar with, I wonder what insight or advice you would want to share based on your journey and your experience that might help somebody else.
For me, it was a lot of just don't believe what your brain's telling you. Just don't believe it. I mean, we are so much more powerful and stronger than um, we think, and so really challenging those beliefs was huge for me in the beginning. So um, yeah, our bodies are just so much more capable than our for me, than our brains haven't allowed me to realize. And so that's my big takeaway.
Absolutely. What about Glenda or Allison?
Sure. Yeah. The other thing too is to just have a lot of compassion for yourself, and do the movement. And if you go out of your training zone, it's okay. I've done it many times. And I've learned to say, it's okay. I'll take a day to rest and I'll get right back out there. And so the more you do it, the more your confidence will build, and the more you will show your brain that movement is safe and it's fun and it's going to make you feel really good. And do it incrementally. So if you haven't done any movement, start with that 5-minute walk outside. you know, dance in your kitchen to a song. Do something small, and slowly and repetitively, you will build more confidence to step out and do more.
Absolutely. I love that you brought that up about the fact that sometimes you'll go out of your training zone, or otherwise known as a window of tolerance. Like, yes, sometimes you might do what feels like too much to your nervous system. And like you said, like, that's okay. The biggest thing in those moments is to remember that you didn't undo all the hard work you've done. You didn't like hurt yourself more. Like, it's okay. It's just recognizing the nervous system is having a response. The brain is not on board with what my conscious mind wanted to do or thought I was ready to do. And it's okay. It's okay. So not reacting, not stressing, not having that fear response kick in, just noticing like, okay, cool. Maybe I'm just going to rest a little bit today and I'll try again tomorrow, but I'll take a little tiny step back. Or the thing is, too, is our window of tolerance can vary so much day to day. So even if I do something today and it feels like too much to my nervous system, I might try it in 3 days and I might be totally okay, because it totally depends on where we're at each day and each moment. So that's really good insight. Allison, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I really love everything that you guys have shared about this. One thing that came to mind is, you know, just make it as fun as possible. Like if there's any sort of fear or hesitancy there, I would say just think outside the box. Like what is the one thing that you'd be most excited to do right now? And I also think what I've learned is that I oftentimes don't realize how much retraining is happening in the day-to-day things that I'm already doing. And I can tell myself, like, oh, I'm not doing the thing that I want to do. But then when I actually reflect on my activities, I realize, oh, I actually did incorporate that, but I didn't realize it. So for example, movement could be walking through your favorite store, or, going to the farmer's market and just walking around and having that experience. And I think also something that's helped get over those fears or limiting beliefs around movement is pairing it with a distraction. So moving with someone else. So like going on a hike with a friend, or going paddling with a friend, listening to music, or, like a multitasking thing, like I said, going to the farmer's market, or, where you're not actually thinking about the movement per se, but you're doing it.
Yes. Like coming to my class and crawling around like a baby and laughing and giggling at yourself for crawling around. Yeah, right. I mean, I think that the things we do in my class can be really weird and so different for some people at first when they first come, that I think some people are like, what is going on here? How can this possibly benefit me? But trust the process, because it works. It's really stuff that really works. And it is fun and silly and different and out of the box.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What if you guys have any final thoughts, just anything else for anybody who's listening at all, that like maybe I didn't ask the question or give you an opportunity to speak on behalf of, but anything pertaining to just retraining or healing journeys, movement, fitness, exercise, anything at all that you want to share with anyone who's listening that you feel like would have benefited you to hear early on or at any point during your journey?
Yeah, I guess I could just add to it's kind of common advice across all areas, but just to let go of what you think it's supposed to like look like or whatnot, because I've been continually surprised at what I'm interested in and what feels good and what's working, what's not. It's so fun to get to know myself in a new way through this and just be open to playing and exploring and just I I used to run way back when, and I found myself running even a couple of times myself, and I surprised myself, but it just felt right to try it. I'm like, yeah, I'll try it. And so to just be really playful and be open to surprises and just get to know yourself differently or newly, I guess, through movement. It's really it's a pretty cool process.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you already talked about earlier, for you, Susan, like you kind of had this like yoga background, and you've expressed with me, like you kind of never really saw yourself as being this like strong person that was like going to do strength type work and exercise. And here you are showing up in my class, getting stronger, doing strength stuff, and then being like, hey, give me these strength exercises. I want more. Who would have thought?
And I'm loving it. I know. It's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Just being
Yeah.
open. Absolutely. And Allison, what did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I know I mentioned this earlier, but I think one thing that I've been really thrilled about, and I just want to encourage other people on this journey as well, to just remember that anything is possible. And um, more likely than not, you're probably going to be doing things that you didn't even think you could do before. Um, and just be open to that and dream big. Um, it's an exciting journey to be on.
Heck yes. And Glenda, I don't know if you had anything that you wanted to add at all.
Yeah, it's very similar to the other ladies, but yeah, just that thing that you miss the most that you want to do, like keep dreaming. Even if it takes you another year or two to get there, like keep dreaming about it. It will happen. And yeah, and be really open. I know in the first year of my retraining, there were things like, I'm never gonna, I'm never gonna do laughter yoga, or I'm never gonna do this or that. And sure enough, one day I was like, you know what, I'm ready for this. And it'll it'll open up your retraining in a whole new way. So just stay really curious, stay really open, and keep believing that it will happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. How you said, "Oh, I'm never going to do this." I was thinking it's so important to not speak in absolutes. If I've learned anything in my life, not just from the healing journey, I just mean in general, like I've learned to like really minimize the use of absolutes, because I have proven myself wrong in that regard so many times. And we do really limit ourselves when we want to speak in absolutes. For like, and, a good example for me, like to piggyback on what you were saying, Glenda, is yeah, if there's something you're dreaming about, keep dreaming about it, because there's a reason it's there, like sizzling inside of you. There's a reason it's still like has a fire lit in your belly. That means something. And the cool thing is staying open, and maybe at some point it does change. Like maybe sometimes I know that I've heard this through other people too, is sometimes we start this healing journey and we think we have these really specific goals. Like, I just want to be able to do this again. And then we get 6 months in and 12 months in, and we're open and we're curious and we're trying new things, and we discover new things about ourselves. And those old things that we were so adamant we're just had to get back to doing again, they fall to the wayside, and we're like, oh, actually, I don't really even care about that anymore. Maybe I had like wrong, like motivation that wasn't really supportive, and who knows, like maybe I'm just changing or evolving. And I discovered new things that I like, and like for an example for me is like when I first started training, all I visualized at first was doing CrossFit again. Like I thought I wanted to get back to CrossFit. But as I've really evolved and gone through this journey, that goal is just like fallen to the wayside. I have all these different ways that feel so much better like for moving my body. But I won't say that I'll never do that again, because who knows, maybe another year down the road, like that's where I'm led. But right now I'm like not attached to that initial goal I had. And with that said, all those, hundreds of visualizations I did about it were still really powerful and beautiful and helped me. They were a catalyst in the journey. But yeah, just staying open to possibility. If something is burning like inside of you and you just really want it, then just trust it. And yeah, just be like, allow things to shift and be okay with that. Try new things, all of it. Um, that's my take. Ladies, this was fun. I am so excited that all three of you volunteered to be a part of my very first panel discussion. To everyone listening, I apologize for if there's any little hiccups, because hey, you know what? We're all just learning as we go. And this was my first time to host three other people on a web platform. And I think it went fairly well. And yeah, I think it was fun. I look forward to doing more of these in the future around different topics. Hopefully, Susan, Glenda, and Allison, hopefully you guys have been an inspiration for other people out there who might even be earlier on in their their retraining or their healing journeys, that feel like compelled to come on and be a part of a discussion and share something because, like it was discussed very early on, we don't need to be quote unquote fully recovered to provide value, wisdom, and insight to one another to support each other along the way through this awesome journey that we are all on. So yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for all being here and being vulnerable and willing to share your experiences and try something new with me. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much.
Yay! Absolutely.
Great.
Yay.
All right, that is a wrap. What are your thoughts on this group discussion around a certain topic? I know that I had a lot of fun doing this and I would really like to do it again. And I think that having a group of people can feel like a lot less intimidating than maybe being the only person with the spotlight on you. And maybe right now you're thinking that you could actually participate in a group discussion also. And maybe you have a topic that you're really passionate about that's been an important part of your journey. If so, please reach out to me and let's discuss it. And in the meantime, don't forget to move your bodies. You are worth it. And until next time, make this week great.